Hi, this is Jeff Nyquist with another edition of Friends and Enemies. I am in the United States. My co-host Alex Benesch is in Germany. We're going to talk about, I just did an essay called Ontological Schlock, which I discuss in detail the new UAP UFO documentary titled The Age of Disclosure, which is on Amazon Video. And of course, I get into some very strange things with ancient Sumerian magic, and and of course, modern psychology. Those folks who think that do you hear the voices too? The voices are really the key, and the voices are not coming from inside the patient. They're coming from an evil spirit, as the ancient Sumerians or the ancient Babylonians and Assyrians would say. So it's a rather strange topic involving psychology and whether or not people are seeing things they're seeing, and whether the government, with its controversy over the disclosure of the truth about these strange objects that are seen in the skies, what that means. I think there is a relation. My main topic is totalitarianism and the advent of World War III. Human evil, political ponerology is really been my subject for decades. And of course, I think evil is definitely connected to this. If we look at the early totalitarians, we see a kind of madness in Karl Marx. We see a madness in Hitler, certainly, a madness in Lenin and Stalin, in Mao. If it's not severe narcissism, it's psychotic. The late Colonel Stanislav Lunev, a GRU defector, told me that the leaders of Russia that he knew, that they were not normal people. These are crazy persons. And he gave me a lecture on what a psychopath is. Um, so this is something coming from the soul, from the spirit. And I think that the world is going awry because of that. The degeneration of Western society, the horrible war in Ukraine that has been unleashed by Russia, and of course the evil leaders in China, and it's all over the world. This poison is spreading through organized crime, drug use. Look at the streets of America's cities. Um, Rising mental illness, going out of control, crime going out of control. There's something is causing all this, and I think evil is a thing people, they kind of don't want to touch. They want to say, oh, everybody's good. It's just lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. Um, no, there's something more here. Maybe the ancient Assyrians and Babylonians had it right. I just wanted to show this book. This is volume 2 of a book, The Spirits, Devils and Evil Spirits. I'm sorry, The Devils and Evil Spirits of Babylonia. And this is from cuneiform tablets, being Babylonian and Assyrian incantations against the demons, ghouls, vampires, hobgoblins, ghosts, and kindred evil spirits which attack mankind. If you know anything about the ancient Assyrians, this was found, by the way, in the library of King Ashurbanipal. If you know anything about these people, they were a very practical, conquering people. They were very successful in war. They're very good at creating armies with effective archers that could sweep the field. Military science was their thing, and they were good builders. Their capital was famously, I believe it was Nineveh. That was the town that remember Jonah got swallowed by the fish and spit up on a beach, and because he didn't want to go to Nineveh to preach repentance, and Nineveh did repent. Well, it's an interesting story in the Bible, but here we have, these people took evil very seriously, and maybe we've been confronting this kind of thing all along. So, Alex, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if we put ourselves into mentally as an experiment, if you put ourselves in the position of rulers over thousands of years ago, when they grew up, these dynastic families, when they grow up, they understand on the one side that there's physical limitations to them, especially when you gain consciousness, around the age of 3 years old or something. They grow up and they are being basically programmed to believe they're more than a human. They're in connection with the other dimensions, with entities. So this is exclusive, and this has to be guarded, and this has to be learned. They're magicians. They have the ability for immortality, or when they physically die, then they will go on, but there has to be something done to ensure that. So this is where we see the pyramids and all these other fantastical structures that took a long time to build. And those were supposed to be vehicles to transport these dead rulers into another state of being, another dimension. But this is where the paradoxical comes in, or the apparent maybe paradox comes in. If they're so special, if they're so unique, if they have all these connections to entities, the gods or whatever, they still have to have these physical steps. The pyramid has to be built. If this pyramid is not built in time, then the whole plan doesn't work out, blah, blah, blah. So then comes the physical realm into play. This is when they need to have a cadre of architects. They know about the measurements, the math, the physics, the chemistry, and they have to have learned this over generations, and then they have to apply that. And we saw that in many places where archaeologists dug up stuff. We saw imperfect projects that were abandoned, projects that failed. We see mismatches. We see a learning curve. So there always was an awareness of your physical limitations, but there was also this drive of being more than a human. Now, when we think of this idea of entities, why would they be in contact with you? Why would they do something with you or for you or against you? What's their game? What's in it for them? What is the rule set? I always compare it to, let's say, a classic horror movie, and horror stories and horror authors and any kind of fictional horror. It's always been influenced by ancient magic and ancient mystery cults. There's always a rule set, right? How do you destroy Freddy Krueger, who kills teenagers in their dreams? And this is when, in every horror story, basically, the protagonists have to figure out what the rule set is. Okay, we have to do A, B, C, D. We have to go from step to step. And if we complete these steps, then we can destroy that demonic creature, right? And if we don't get it right, if we miss one step, we lose. So this is why I think for thousands and thousands of years, when we had empires, I think of it as a dual mode system. So you have like this mode one, which is the physical, just a very mechanical, physical realm. I apply this energy to that object, and then something happens, or I mix this chemical with that chemical and something happens, and it's observable, it's repeatable, and that sort of thing. And then there's the second mode, which is trying to be in contact with or be influenced by, gain advantage of entities, other dimensions. Kind of what people call the supernatural or the religious, or whatever term people may use in our primitive sense of language. And so when you just operate in one of those modes, you're super mechanical, it's super materialistic, you can make things happen, right? But you're still limiting yourself. When you're just in the other mode, the supernatural, when you're just constantly obsessed with it, and you forget about the physical, observable realm, then I think you get what we saw in, let's say, European history for a long time. This is when people got obsessed with what's it called? Animism, where we think that every object is sort of alive, and this rock and that tree, and of course it's all connected, but what do you do with it? What do you do in your everyday life? You wake up and then you do what? What's going to work? What's not going to work? You worship a bunch of trees. Maybe that's a waste of time. The way you do it, or people make decisions based on what reading the tea leaves, so to say, or speaking to an oracle, and the oracle is using some supposed magic objects, and then the leadership of the tribe, or a larger structure, a larger society, they make a decision based on that, but that decision may turn out to be wrong. So being in one mode or the other exclusively, I think that's a dumb idea. And empires, I think, have mastered sort of combining these two things, or weaving back and forth from one mode to the other, back to one. This is what we saw with the Royal Society, where all the leading best scientists were also Freemasons. And then there's this thing about catching a glimpse, catching this sort of super inspiration that could come from any sort of place or any sort of thing. And that's when they weave back into the other mode, and they push something, and then they discover something that changes the world, or the way we live. So I think people have to master different modes and different realms. And I mean, it's hard to get people to read at all. But then what we actually have to achieve is we have to read about the psychology, we have to read about the pathologies, we have to read about the religions, the empires, how stuff is applied in various other fields of science, and then kind of combine that. And I think that's super hard to do, but I don't think there's an alternative. I mean, people invented the internet. Okay, so now we can have a phone. We just take your standard iPhone, you install an app, be it YouTube or TikTok, and you watch the shorts, and you can just scroll through various short little videos, and it could be anything. It's like a stream of consciousness. You're hooked into this global consciousness, and you can jump from one bit to the other. Different topics, different people, different mindset, different genetics that every one of these people online, that everyone has. And it's almost a bit like schizophrenia. I think if you scroll too much instead of reading, I don't think everybody is. I mean, I don't think people have gotten massive problems through reading alone. But I think if you overload your brain with that short form video content, I mean, it's almost a bit like schizophrenia. If you've seen some schizophrenics in your life, or you see what they ramble in a video or what they ramble in a comment section, it's very stream of thought. They jump from one thing to the next with no apparent connection between those little bits. But they think it's genius. They think they're onto something super magical. And I've read about experiences of schizophrenic people. There was one person who got himself locked up in a mental facility, I think in Hamburg, city Hamburg, and he was convinced that he was being chased by these interdimensional beings, and he was afraid that some forces, human and or supernatural, they were going to attack the city of Hamburg with nuclear weapons. So he felt he needed to get out of this facility, or else he would be nuked. And when they got him on antipsychotic or whatever medications, and he became normal, he noticed that stark contrast between the rush, feeling like you're in the middle of this cosmic adventure, and you're a protagonist, you're something special, the most exciting thing ever, but then you get back to earth, and it's a boring day. You wake up and there's therapy, and you're supposed to draw pictures for the doctors and talk to the doctors.
People, I've got this book. This is, and I kind of recommend it. It's interesting. He's done some interviews. Jerry Marzinski, he wrote this with Sherry Aswani. They treated psychiatric patients, And he writes about, first of all, most schizophrenics are depressed, they're energy depleted. And he worked with them in a prison, and he developed, he got to talking to the voices, and he ended up working with a retired psychologist named Wilson Van Dusen. And this is what he writes in the book: schizophrenics have been trying to tell us for centuries that these discarnate voices, the voices that schizophrenics hear, are controlling their thought stream, plotting against them, and triggering their violent abnormal behavior. Plotting schizophrenics worldwide are all saying the same things, but no one is listening. Um, and one of the things that he discovered when he actually at one point trying to get at these voices, the voices started talking to Marzinski. They wanted to talk to him and say, "Why are you interfering with our way of life?" And when he got to questioning the voices, they professed a desire to conquer the world, or that they have already done or were in the process of taking over the world. This is a very disturbing notion. Of course, when you read the ancient Babylonian um, bands, or they're like exorcisms. They're incantations to keep evil spirits away, to drive them away. There seemed to be an awareness by the ancient Babylonians and Assyrians that there is this evil out here, that it can get inside of you, and that it can affect your behavior. It can corrupt you. It can poison your life, because it talks about how these spirits roam the earth looking for victims, hunting them down, and attacking them. It's they attack humankind and torture them. And when we look at all of these problems in the world, we had the Catholic Church, before the Reformation. Of course, we had the Orthodox Church in the East, the Christian churches. They had exorcists. You prayed. You tried to live a sanctified life, stay away from evil. Cultivating goodness. And you find this cultivation of goodness in the ancient philosophers as well. You see these sentiments in Socrates, for example, who inspired both Plato and Aristotle. So goodness is a real component. But then you have this power lusting, and this, you look at the madness of some of these Roman emperors, like Caligula. I mean, he was really crazy. Heliogabalus, who had eight naked women pulling his chariot. You have some power mad crazies that suddenly appear. Where does this madness come from? And then, of course, you've got the madness of Mao Zedong, who had similar kind of things. And you've got these cult leaders, and of course Hitler, in your country, Germany, with all that attended that, the massive killing of Jewish people, um, and many others. So it's this evil seems to be a real thing, and concerned with it. Why, once religion starts to go away, once people start to abandon Christianity, are we having this epidemic of mental illness? Why is this totalitarianism spreading everywhere, spreading even into democratic institutions, corruption, organized crime? It seems like, you have the church, you have this bulwark supporting goodness. Once that goes away, the evil just kind of floods in. Is this, am I imagining something here?
Well, I think that's the core. I think of this famous story, which is called The Exorcist. First the novel, then the movie. You see that, and there's a whole backstory to it. I wrote about this in volume 2 of my series on the empires, focusing on religion and the empires, and there's like this the original inspiration and the original writer. There was some connection to Catholics. There's a Catholic angle to it, and of course in the story itself, there's a very strong Catholic element to it, and it's this. There's this shot in the beginning. I mean, well, the movie starts, I think, with a shot of the sun. You see the desert. We're in Iraq, or modern day Iraq. which used to be Mesopotamia, various empires with various very dark cults. So you see the sun, which was many people's idea of essential power. The just essential, eternal, or seemingly eternal power. And then there's this priest who's kind of moonlighting as an archaeologist or whatever, and there's this excavation site, and they find an object, and eventually he is facing off against a statue. Was this already the Pazuzu demon or something else?
This is one of the demons, by the way, from these Babylonian Kingdom.
So he's looking at this statue of this demon, this ancient demon. The statue is kind of looking at him, and people have noticed over the years that in the movie there's a slight sound of wind on that can be heard. And I think Pazuzu was sometimes associated with wind, or as a method of transportation, or a way of directing force. So the setup is you have the Catholic Church as this bulwark, as a protector, and then you have these ancient demon cults, or these ancient demons, and over the years there's this back and forth, there's this battle, and then seemingly random, this demon gets into this little girl, and the mother tries everything, goes from psychiatrist to psychiatrist, and have MRI scans done. Eventually she wants an exorcism. She gets into the whole supernatural explanation. Like in every other horror story, there's a set of rules. What's the bad entity you're dealing with? What are the rules? What steps do we have to take to defeat it?
Is this story based on a true story?
Yes and no. I mean, there have been reports of cases that were handled, and this whole topic was I think was never really supposed to be that much in the public eye. And of course, there's differing accounts, as we can imagine. There's people that say some of these cases were real. Whatever real means in our human limited understanding, and then there's some people that say no, this was just schizophrenic, mentally ill kids or teens, and then these priests came and made everything worse. And sometimes it's believed that the priest does his thing, and the mentally ill person who's not possessed kind of gets better through that fantasy projected by the priest. So there's completely differing interpretations of it. But then in the movie The Exorcist, there's actually a deleted scene. I think this is when the kid, which is kind of the protagonist, gets possessed, and the mother, I think they visit the Washington Monument. I think they go to D.C. I haven't seen the movie in a while. And then, of course, what do you see in Washington, D.C., or what do you see in the movie? It's these ancient-style buildings, these temples, because a lot of government buildings are modeled after Roman temples or Greek temples. And it's like this notion that there's always been this battle, and it's a constant... This is a work that has to be done constantly to defend against these demons. And when we don't do this work, we get overrun. We get overrun by these entities, and it's weird. It's never really explained what it wants. The entity in the movie, it calls itself the devil, but if you read into the background, it's a particular demon, and there's supposed to be many of them. So this is like the setup, and these characters, especially the priests who do the exorcism, these two men, they talk about this. Why this girl? It doesn't make sense. It's one of the famous lines in the movie. And then there's an explanation. Well, this is what the entity does. It doesn't want to reveal why it's doing this. Because if you're a powerful super entity, do you need that to have fun? Do you need that to feel good? Is that what you do? Because it's when we talk about parasitic demons, it seems a bit primitive, doesn't it? because we look at primitive animals or insects and we're all feeding on something or someone. It's always like looking around for something to feed, and it seems when it's a
All
lion,
animals, only plants do photosynthesis. The rest of us
yeah,
have to feed on plants or animals to live, right?
yeah. But it
In a
seems like
sense, we're all kind of
it seems
parasitic.
paradoxical. It seems paradoxical to me that on the one hand, these entities are supposed to be so much beyond our plant realm, animal realm, human realm. They're so much more advanced, but they still have to feed. They still have to obey certain rules because what happens if they don't feed? They feel bad, they die, they get weak, they get miserable. What is it? We don't know. Um, but this is when the human element I think comes in. When an ancient ruler was understanding from a very young age on, you're supposed to be more than a human, but you still have human limitations. You fall down as a kid, you hurt your knee, or you bleed, or you get sick, or there's just things you cannot do. You're not physically strong enough to lift a certain object, or there's things you just don't know yet. There's limitations, and you want to overcome these limitations. And there's been all these stories that have been made, famous stories about trading with the entities. We talked about Goethe's Faust on the show before, where the main protagonist is a scientist, and he's well versed in all these sciences, but he's getting older, he's getting frustrated, he's not getting where he wants to be, and as a human with desires, he's not getting what he wants. So on his own, without a group, without professional guidance, without comrades who know this stuff, all by himself, he's conjuring up or calling this devil or demon, and he makes a deal with it, the demon. And it all goes south, not just for him, but also for other people in his life. And it's always bothered me when we were essentially forced to read the story and interpret the story in school, because that's what we have to do in this country. It always bothered me because we were given this very narrow framework in which to interpret the story, but I always question the frame first. Does this frame make sense, at least for a while, or does it not make sense? And so I thought, okay, so he's basically in the book, if you don't go beyond it, he has two options: live his life the way he's been living it and be miserable and die. That's choice number one. Or choice number two, he makes a deal with the devil. He's experimenting with himself, and it's all this danger. So these are two options. Well, what about a third option? It's never mentioned explicitly, but it's kind of there, right? The third option would have been to get with experienced people, get into a secret society that studied these ancient cults, just prove yourself within that group, and then in this group setting or with group help and certain protections, then you can call up the entities. Then you can make a deal with the entities. But don't do it on your own, because you're not experienced in it. You're just a scientist. As I said in the beginning, the standard science mode that gets you some places, but it's kind of limited and boring, or the supernatural. And there's like three options on the table, but we only get to hear about two of them. But there's a third one. You're still on mute.
Let me throw some ideas out here. Look, some of the greatest scientists, Alexander Graham Bell, are inventors. A lot of the great thinkers and scientists and the great historians, they were people who did their work alone. Thinking is a solitary act. It's not a group activity. Bureaucratic science is notoriously horrible. One of the things Jerry Marcinski makes out in his book is modern psychiatry is a scam. He says that all this academic psychology and all this throwing meds at people is not making them better. It is masking the symptoms. It's not really treating the illness. And of course, so he's finding that this is a spiritual thing, and he didn't come at it. He was not a religious person starting out. He didn't see it that way. And so you have this individuality that we're all struggling in ourselves, and then you have the fact that there's this. It seems to me that Victor Victor Kulish, who was the Soviet laser scientist that worked on their Star Wars project, and he's got a book on laser physics you can get off of Amazon. I think he had the rank of a general under the Soviet system, and I've spoken to him, and he talks about his God system as math. That is his basis of his laser physics, which
Yeah.
I think he's got patents and stuff on this, so it's not nonsense. And he said, look, reality is mental, and that God is the highest, the God system. God is the highest, he uses the Matryoshka doll, those Russian where there's dolls within dolls, and the doll that contains all the other dolls, that's God, right? All the other dolls are inside God, stacking down to the smallest doll. And so that's what we're living in. And God sort of makes the shape of the whole system in which we're in. And all the laws, all the rules, everything, the way it works, and the higher level entities too. Um, and that this is actually how reality works. And since it's this structure, if you think about it this way, that God has created this, it's a creation and it's harmonious and it fits together perfectly. And there's a place for all of us to fit inside of this Matryoshka doll system. He says all systems are like this. They're things stacked on inside other things. Um, that what evil is an attempt to disconnect. That is, they're in the God system, but they want to destroy it. They want to be out of it. Maybe they want to be gods on their own and create their own system, but they don't want to be in this. So they're attempting to create the disharmony, the break, and so therefore evil is destructive. It kills. It is in its disharmony, right? And so you find all these this philosophic conception of order versus disorder, which is something fundamental that is talked about by Eric Voegelin, the German American philosopher, and I think that this order disorder thing, chaos versus order, I guess you could say, manifestation. That this is really when you have this story going back about Satan revolting from God and Satan's angels being cast down to hell, and hell being kind of sort of a place that's the opposite of heaven. And then you have these entities that they want to torment mankind because they can't defeat God, but they can get at God by attacking His creation, by attacking man. It's a fantastic um, story in terms of its structure, of what it shows about fundamental things about how the universe works, uh, and as a metaphor for understanding maybe some of these advanced physics concepts. But then when you get down to this level where Jerry Marzinski and people like Wilson Van Dusen are talking about, look, these schizophrenics, they hear these voices telling them to do bad things. And then narcissists, you think, do narcissists hear voices, or is it subliminal in a narcissist? Because there's a spectrum from a psychopath to a narcissist. There's this spectrum. And of course, they drain people, right? A narcissist sucks people dry around them. They are by doing what? By being negative, by
A
saying
zero,
negative
yeah, they
things.
treat it like a zero sum game. I take from you, you have less, I have more. It's not like good people
Right,
that create more
right.
for me and for you.
Yeah, and it's fascinating quotes here. You know, uh, the voices do indeed. This was what Van Dusen concluded. The voices that schizophrenics are hearing represent an intelligence independent of the patient. They operate by constantly pummeling a chosen victim with incessant lies and negativity. It's largely, Jerry Marzinski calls it negativity. And if you think about it, look, there's been this in theology, this notion that God is truth, God is reality. He's the ultimate reality because he maintains the objective reality around us from moment to moment. And there's something in the human nature that truth is important to us. And, if God is the truth and the reality that He manifests is
Yeah,
truth,
what happens if
right?
what happens if millions and potentially billions of people, just regular people, all kinds of different people, if they all are induced or seduced to be like Goethe's Faust, right? People
Make
are
a deal with the
invited,
devil.
yeah, be invited to conjure up entities and make deals with them of some sort. Because if you look at the communist infiltration of the internet world, culture, and video games and TV shows and movies. Filmmakers for the longest time have said that cinema is like public collective hallucination, suspension of disbelief. You're watching actors lit with artificial lights, and they have rehearsed their lines, and there's special effects which are not real. But for the duration of a movie, if it's well made and you're willing to suspend your disbelief, you can sort of get into other people's lives. It's almost like you're superhuman. You're leaving this world, this realm, and now you dive into another. I think the most clearest example in recent memory, at least for me, was James Cameron's Avatar when it came out in 3D and when 3D was new. And it's even the movie, the story is about a character who leaves his physical body and then gets into another artificial alien body. So it's like this multidimensional thing. And James Cameron is a communist. Today I saw an old clip of James Cameron, the director. I think it was talking with George Lucas, director of Star Wars. And they're both communists, and they talked about how, the rebels in their movies, or rebels in their style of art. Rebels are the ragtag good heroes, and they're fighting a larger empire. They're fighting a larger structure using asymmetrical warfare. And with their communist background, they think that's good per se. You're destroying an empire as a ragtag group of terrorists, but they would call them freedom fighters. They would not call them terrorists. And so,
Yeah, and this is like Satan's the original rebel,
yeah,
right? He's
but
the
this
one
is
that rose up first.
But it's not just this infusion of communist ideas per se. It's also communists controlling the delivery systems for the art, and they give people, the average different folks out there, they give them at least the illusion of almost like interdimensional travel through art, the video games. So you can spend hours diving into a video game influenced by communists, and you're in a totally different world. Or you scroll through
the communist world.
Yeah. Or you scroll through a communist cell phone app like TikTok, and it's a stream of stuff. You can scroll through video and see all kinds of different things from all kinds of different people, and you can access that stuff whenever you want. It's almost like you have superpowers. The internet gives you seemingly superpowers. You can get into all kinds of things, access all kinds of people's minds like you're a superhuman being. That's what the technology allows. So I don't think it's just the communist base ideas that are being transported to people through art. It's also this, they invite you to have the illusion of being interdimensional or weaving in and out of dimensions and getting in and out of people's heads. It's almost like a bit like schizophrenia, stream of consciousness. One video doesn't really relate to the other, and you can access stuff that you want, be it pornographic material, be it adventure material, or radical political material. You have this power. It's almost like you're more than a human. You can get the stuff when you want it, and you can get the stuff that you want, right? This is kind of I think the deeper communist media strategy.
There's
and
dopamine hits on some of these.
it's like a drug, and it takes a lot, especially a lot of reading. Old school paper books. It takes a lot of reading to begin to dare go beyond what you're normally doing.
Another thing about taking in information like that, and you've mentioned this way of taking in information, just sort of cruising around and just gulping it down. And this is a point that Eric Berglund makes, is that it's very important for us to digest and analyze the information that comes to us, to have understanding that goes with it, not just to absorb the information in raw form. And what we regurgitate is just undigested, topics. He called it unanalyzed topics. That's all that's in people's heads. And so this is in a way it's programming them because it always has subliminal or other messaging. And one of the big messaging here with this revolt theme that you've touched on with Star Wars and of course James Cameron and so on, and of course that movie those movies horrible, uh, but what you find is that this is where Voegelin talks about Gnosticism. The Gnostic is the guy that believes Satan's the good guy and God's the bad guy, right? The God is the demiurge who basically have taken over the world. My camera just went berserk here. Sorry about that. The demiurge is the guy that's taken over. I shouldn't speak with my hands. The demiurge is the guy demiurge is the guy that talks that created the world, and it's a bad job. It's a bad creation. The world's not right. So you have to rebel against it. So the snake is the good guy in the Garden of Eden with the Gnostics. So you want to eat the forbidden fruit. You want to do the bad thing. You want to revolt. You want to disobey. You
Hmm.
want to have disharmony. You want to have chaos. Um, this is the whole idea. So you know naturally they're communists because communism is about you know breaking everything down, destroying, tearing down, as if somehow that act of destruction is an act of creation. Karl Marx once said in a poem that he wrote when he was at university that he would be the equal to God, who is the creator of the world, if he could destroy the world. And of course, we all know destroying something is easier than creating it.
Yeah.
If you build something beautiful, all you need is a sledgehammer to break it into pieces. It's
Yeah, I
easy to
mean, when I
destroy.
sometimes I work with AI, like an AI system, and I'm staying in control because I'm created my custom GPT. I was feeding it my material. I read through the through the text that's being generated by this AI. I can correct things because I am capable of doing so. I'm not at the mercy of an AI. But I have to say, I mean, it gives people, I think, that sense of magic when you type in a prompt, which is just an order. Okay, LLM, large language model, uh, conjure up a text or an image or a video that's like this, and that. It's almost like the prompt, the order to the machine is like a magic spell, and you have to do the magic spell right. You have to write a good prompt. You have to learn prompting because if you just prompt, the result will not be as good. It's almost like a magician or sorcerer. You have to learn the spells. You have to apply the spells right. Otherwise, the result is not exactly what you expected it. And so there's like all this enticement, and we heard about this political war behind AI. Some of these big AI companies, they're fairly communist. And again, it's like this enticing people. Oh, here's a magic tool. You can do magic. You can apply your spell and you get result. But I mean, if the average person out there who doesn't want to read real books, who doesn't really want to make the effort or can do the effort to read books, now everybody wants to be Goethe's Faust. Everybody wants to mingle with this technology or entities or the illusion of entities. Everybody wants to be Faust now, but at least the character Faust was a scientist. He was smart. He had read a lot of stuff, and even he failed. So why do people assume that they can be successful at this? If they don't have this solid background, why do they think they can control it? Right? It's like, I mean, people have compared communism for a long time, ever since it's become a real world force and not just a crazy concept. People have always compared it to a mental illness, and I agree with that because it's like you see, same as with traditional conspiracy mythology, you see it when people get infected by it. They're exposed to it like it's a flu, or it's something more serious, and then it gets them. It
Yeah.
changes them,
Well,
and it's hard to
Voegelin
change them
calls it,
back.
yeah, rather than a mental illness, Voegelin calls it a spiritual illness.
Yeah. And it's
And
hard to exorcise them. It's hard to make an exorcism and get
it's
this thing out of them.
it's hard. This book, which is very interesting book, Charles Upton, The Alien Disclosure Deception. The Metaphysics of Social Engineering. This book is very thought-provoking, and of course, he's a very sophisticated writer. And he talks about John Mack, who was a psychologist who worked. He was was it Harvard? He was at. He was a very prominent fellow working with people who suffered alien abduction. Right. An alien abduction, of course, famously bears the marks of. It's very similar to demonic. Not possession, but affliction. You know, when demons are inflicting someone, and he and here such a fascinating uh, quote from Mack that Upton has in here. He says. He writes, among the case histories Dr. Mack presents, and I've read Mack's books, by the way, it is rather horrifying, are some of the most horrifying stories of demonic attack and possession I have ever encountered, though he does not recognize them as such. He admits, quote, abductees bear physical and psychological scars of their experience. These range from nightmares and anxiety to chronic nervous agitation, depression, even psychosis, to actual physical scars, puncture in incision marks, scrapes, burns, and sores. And Upton goes on to say that Mack speaks of broken marriages and alienation of affection between parents and children as among the more common after effects, and says that negative physical and psychological effects persist even in cases where spontaneous healing of chronic or incurable diseases occurs. One would naturally assume, therefore, that the therapeutic approach would include an attempt to shield his patients from ongoing alien influence. See, that modern science looks at these things and doesn't recognize the ancient symptoms of what the ancient Sumerians, ancient Babylonians, and Assyrians would recognize as attacked by evil spirits who hunteth and chaseth man, as the ancient tablet says, and attacks and afflicts man. Um, so it is a real thing, and so is communism one of these afflictions? Is it the super version of the affliction? Is it the ultimate form of the disease? Carl Jung, in his book Aeon, the Phenomenology of Self, in which he goes through all these ancient prophecies and and cosmologies, and he basically points out that the idea of Antichrist. He says, "Look, Antichrist is something real." He says, "What is the definition of Antichrist? It's somebody or something that promises the same thing that Christ promises, but delivers the exact opposite." And then he says there has been this Antichrist force moving through history, getting stronger, building up. You can see it. He traces it through the Albigensian heresy. He traces it through the Renaissance and Enlightenment, and then to the French Revolution, and then to the Bolshevik Revolution, and of course the Nazi Revolution, and says, look, this is getting more intense. And this modern socialism is the ultimate form of this Antichrist manifestation in history. And Carl Jung very much feared that it was going to end in a thermonuclear holocaust. That, of course, these entities want to destroy mankind, and mankind is sort of going along with it. And mankind seems rather like a rag doll, right? The devil's rag baby used to be the expression back 100 years ago that people used. And this seems to be where we're at now. Every policy of every government is in some way bent on suicide, whether
Yeah.
it's open borders or nuclear, the crazy nuclear policies of Russia and China. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when there's so many challenges in our time today. It's like it's not easy growing up in many places, and depending on your statistical luck or lack thereof, there's more problems that you have to face, and there's complex trauma. There's something like a multifaceted, complex, post-traumatic or traumatic stress disorder. It's not just that some people have one super trauma and they take damage from that, but there's also like many constant smaller types of trauma that can get to people. And so when people are vulnerable like this, right? People are vulnerable like this, and then they get exposed to, the communism or this internet craziness, that this seeming magic that you're being offered. It gets to people, and it's hard because when you want to build something with people, I mean, try that. Organize a group of 10 people. Just 10 people to do something, to be productive on an ongoing basis, to form a hierarchy and keep it going. Try it with 10 people, right? And see how hard it is if you have these regular people that are in your group. And then imagine 1,000 people organizing 10,000 people or 1 million people or 10 million people. See, that's kind of the thing. And you need people, ideally, for specific tasks. You ideally have people that are intelligent enough, people that read quite a bit. And you need people that don't have specific personality flaws, right? But then on the other side, if you have a number of people that are not that intelligent from the get-go, they don't read, and they have personality flaws, and they get programmed, through communism or esoteric occult communism, how do you combat that? How do you get that demon out of that person if everything is working against you? Everything is working against your attempt at an exorcism because of that person's personality flaws, lack of intelligence, and lack of knowledge. And it's so hard. I mean, to progress yourself, if you have serious character flaws, to overcome those flaws is super hard to do. And if you want to help somebody else who has severe character flaws, it's also super hard to do. This is what employers know. You can teach people skills, you can improve people's skills, but if a person has or shows significant character flaws, usually employers don't bother because they say it's too hard to do. We rather pick someone with lesser skills and teach him those skills. We rather have that than deal with somebody who has skills from the get-go, lucrative skills, but is a pain in the butt to work with, and he's never going to change. So, didn't the CIA have something called, or being internally referred to as, the crank file? These were cases of people who were oftentimes schizophrenic and they had access to information, or they did something outrageous, and the CIA was interested in them, or crazy books being written because there may be something interesting and valuable inside of that craziness. And so they had this office, or this unit, finding crazy stuff, finding crazy people, and see if they can make something out of it, or stop a danger, stop some dangerous thing from happening. I think that's what the CIA had for a long time. And I read a lot per se, but I also sometimes choose to read bad stuff. I try to find the best stuff there is, and I have a pre-selection system, so I narrow it down that something seems promising. But I don't believe my pre-selection process is perfect, so that's why I oftentimes read stuff that I think or assume from the get-go is mediocre or average, or sometimes I read stuff where I know it's garbage, or it's written by a crazy person, or somebody who's just gone off the rails, whatever those rails may be. But I choose to read different stuff because there may be something inside the crazy that may give me an idea. It's like a glimpse of something that I can connect with other things, and then I can progress with something, right? I mean, this is something that I used to do, because if you just avoid all crazy, which seems like a healthy thing to do, I think you're missing something. And there's so much crazy now. There's so much crazy now in the world, especially through the internet and the availability and the magic that you can conjure up. So we have to figure out how to counter that. We have to figure out more sophisticated ways to get people out. And I've seen the dry approaches of talking people out of communism, or the dry approaches of immunizing people against communism. But this very methodical, standard approach, I don't think that's strong enough, right? I don't think that's going to work, because if we cannot inspire people, they're going to look for magic elsewhere. You think that's
Well, I think that the magic elsewhere. Look, people used to go to church. They would take communion. They believed in God. That was the magic they believed in. It was a goodness to become a saint, to become a good person, to live in God's way. That was what people were. I mean, this was. I mean, the number of people going to church. You go back 100 years in the United States. I mean, it was just the vast majority did this, and society was very much. We didn't need police. When you go back further in time, um, where society is really very religious, you don't need as much of this control of society, police states, and so on. But now we've gotten away from that, and so what is the new magic? This is what concerns me about this Age of Disclosure video. Is the point is made by Charles Upton in his book The Alien Disclosure Deception, that um, this alien disclosure theme breaks down traditional paradigms, which are focused on God and goodness, and our Creator, and the order of the universe, the beauty of it, truth and goodness and beauty. These are set aside. Where is the truth, goodness, and beauty in Close Encounters of the Third Kind? You know, encountering with an alien. You've got where is the truth, goodness, and beauty in James Cameron's films, or for that matter in any of these modern filmmakers' films? I mean, it's mostly just degradation, or something that's just off the wall. So there is no goodness being cultivated here, and what are they opening the door to, in breaking down traditional paradigms? And then of course you've got the communists, and of course you've got their agent, Mr. Dugan, who although he claims to be a traditionalist, he wants the czar to be red, and he wants traditionalism with a hammer and sickle. I mean, he's really just an agent of the same old communist bloc. He wants to destroy America and the West, and everything. And of course, he was what? He was really originally a follower of Aleister Crowley, you know, who was about magic with a K, right? And the creepiest part in Crowley's book Magic is about, well, the greatest magical operation is a mass ritual sacrifice of human beings where millions die in one instant, and you harvest that magical energy, right? That's right in the pages of the book. You think that all these children of GRU generals and rocket forces generals in Russia that grew up fascinated by that book that was going around Moscow back in the 80s, you think that they escaped that? If there really is, if the root of evil is, do you hear the voices too? What are they telling you to do? Bad things? What's Russia getting ready to do? What is with all of these incredible weapons that can wipe out people? And it seems in the war in Ukraine, even irrationally, they're wasting enormous resources just attacking average everyday people that really don't have an impact on the war. Why are they killing and terrorizing them, right? It's almost like it's evil for its own sake, just like Hitler's gassing of the Jews and rounding up of the Jews. It's like, these
Yeah.
are productive
I mean,
citizens. Why are you getting rid of them?
I mean, the hardest thing to achieve is strength, actual, real strength without evil. I mean, without this disgusting evil. I think that's hard, really hard, because there's some people that they just want to be good, but they don't really understand strength, or they don't know how to build it. They don't know how to use it, or they're afraid of it. So they just want to be good, but they're not capable enough of fighting actual evil. And then there's people who think that, well, morals are dumb and just hold you back. So they're mentally lazy, and they just take and take and take. They're like parasites or vampires, but very few of them actually are successful long term and excited and happy long term that way. So it's like a primitive idea of strength. Just oh, well, why bother with all this complicated stuff? Just take whatever you can get, and just don't care what how many victims there are in your wake. But to have to have and to build and maintain strength without evil, that's the hardest thing to achieve. And I think when people achieve that, these are the hardest enemies to beat. And so this is why we never see Dugin, I think, in these other these other characters. Why they never really get into that. They don't want to. They do not want. They do not want Ukrainians to have strength without evil, and that's why the propaganda is always focused on so hard focused on denying that there's good about Ukrainians when they exercise or have strength. So anytime a Ukrainian exercises strength on the battlefield while still trying his hardest or her hardest to be to be not evil, to not be like the Russians, the Russians in their propaganda will deny that. They will say there's just evil in Ukraine. There's nothing good in Ukraine. The only if we take it over can we bring some goodness. To Ukraine? And I don't see all the propagandists in the West, the Tucker Carlsons or Alex Joneses or this Fuentes guy and others. I don't see any one of them explaining this to the audience to really give them a concept of and a strategy to attain strength without evil. I mean, try run a structure, try run a country, try to defend a structure, try to defend a country, and not be total evil. This is kind of what empires, I think, struggled with for the longest time. If you're not strong enough, you get taken over by a different empire, and they're evil. So how do you get strong enough to defend and not be like those others? And I think the cheaper way, the faster way of attaining strength is just you're a parasite. You just find somebody who's currently not able to defend himself, and you just take from them, or you just weaken them, right? To deprive them of this ability to create strength without evil. And it's like when you go to a war. I mean, when you fight a war. I mean, the stuff you have to do, and then the additional task of trying to still stay a person that's not fully evil. That's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing to achieve. And it's like communism is trying to sell this idea of they're trying to sell this lie that they can provide you strength and they're the most moral thing ever, or they are the same as morality. But you don't see George Lucas and James Cameron admitting that the Soviet Union was a vicious empire. They're not. They haven't solved the old riddle.
Their empire is in Cameron's films, and also it's America is the bad empire. Is the model for the bad empire. It's the United States, and this is a very peculiar thing. Look, there's evil in all people. There's evil. It cuts through the human heart. But look, if you're judging as a political scientist, if you're trying to analyze, remember I said you've got to take these topics and analyze them. What you find is that these totalitarians, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, and their successors, look at Putin. You're dealing with a very real evil there. You're dealing with something. And so why do these powerful Hollywood producers, makers of entertainment, they're basically making poison for kids, because that's largely who consumes it. And those kids become adults. Their tastes are set by those movies. And of course their taste is lost for books. That was, like you said earlier on, it's hard to get people to read books. Books is where the real thought and the breaking down, this is where you learn to analyze topics, to break them down, to see, okay, what does this mean? How do I understand this? And we're not understanding this. And so when you look at the age of disclosure, after people have, watched Close Encounters of the Third Time and, E.T., where they use that, what is the movie E.T., the extraterrestrial? He's got the thing from the
Mm.
Sistine Chapel where God's hand and Adam's hand, and they have the extraterrestrial now finger, right? Is the finger of God now. I mean, that's kind of symbolism. They're exposing people to that. And people are not really analyzing it. They're not parsing it, what it means. And so they're being changed by this messaging by people who are in their thinking communist. The new religion, as I call it. People attack me for that. It's not a religion. Joseph Schumpeter and Whittaker Chambers said it was, and that's good enough for me. Joseph Schumpeter was much smarter and better educated than me, and Whittaker Chambers was a communist. He wrote the book Witness. He said it's man's second oldest religion. It's what the snake said to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Surely you won't die if you eat the forbidden fruit. You'll be like gods, right? You'll become gods. And that guy over there that made everything, he doesn't want you to be a god. But I, Satan, I want you to be a god, right? So that's what the story is, and it was very, when you read, this is from the beginning of Chambers' book Witness, his letter to his children, how he's explaining it, what communism is. And I think the problem is people, they look at this academic Marxism and they get confused. Well, Stalin wasn't a Marxist, Lenin wasn't a Marxist. No, you idiot.
Mm.
Marx said that he wasn't a Marxist, and he said there's no Marxist dogma, and whatever works. The objective is to destroy, right? Just like those
Yeah.
demons that Marzlinsky talks about. Destroy the patient, destroy their mental health, destroy their life, destroy their sanity, take all their energy out of them.
Yeah, I mean, there was this cultural phenomenon, which was The Last of Us. This started as a video game series, became super influential, and then in fairly recent times, there was a television show which was terrible. And when the first game was released and it became a phenomenon, this thing happened that always happens when something becomes popular. Some communist networks, they get a hold of the franchise, and then they change it the way they want it to be changed. And it's like in the first game, it's this post-apocalyptic America. There's this fungus that is poisoning people and turning them into violent zombies. And so order breaks down. The U.S. government tries to maintain order. They kind of failed, and there's some patriotic sounding groups out there like the Fireflies, and they fashion themselves as the rebels, as a better structure. But it's difficult, and then you have the main protagonist, which is this man, Joel, and he's kind of your all-American, super cool guy, very strong, kind of like an old school idea of a man. And Joel, during this zombie outbreak, Joel had lost his daughter, and that traumatized him, right? And so he had a classic family, like what the communists hate, what they want to destroy, a classical family. So he had these attachments. So then, at some point, he is taken on a mission. He's supposed to smuggle I think 14-year-old girl, smuggle her out of this quarantine zone to another part of the country, because this girl is immune to that zombie disease, and so they want to make a vaccine, with the help of this immune girl. So this is kind of the basic storyline, and I don't think I'm spoiling this for anybody out there. Just trying to make my point here. So these two characters, this man and this girl, they battle their way across the United States, and at some point they reach a destination, and Joel is presented with a choice that's already been made over his head. He's being told that, well, in order to make a vaccine or have a chance of making a vaccine, the girl needs to die. this is a sacrifice that has to be made to save all the other people from the disease. And so Joel then makes another decision. He frees the girl, killed, because he now feels like it's just like his daughter, a family attachment which the communists don't like. He breaks out of this facility with the girl, and they go to relative safety. So this is this conundrum, right? You know, was he supposed to sacrifice the girl for the greater good? But he wasn't capable of doing so because he had already lost a daughter. If he had never had kids, maybe this character would have made the choice of sacrificing the girl for others. But in general, the audience would understand that he wasn't able to make that choice. He just couldn't. If somebody else could have made that choice, but not him. So that was the game, and it's kind of like makes people think. It's a very it's a story. It's a game that makes you think, and you have some very interesting characters, especially a strong male character who is strong, very strong, without being evil. You know, without being pure, regular evil. So he has actually achieved that. So then when this game became a phenomenon, this guy from the studio, I think his name is Neil Druckmann, he's like this, I think he has a Jewish background, but he's a communist. And this is like a thing where they still want to cling to some tradition, but at the same time they hate tradition. They want to destroy it, and they want to change everything. So
Right.
then
Well, that's the thing about Dugan. The inconsistencies are exactly this.
Yeah, so let me just
Here's
finish. Let me finish this real quick. So this Druckmann guy gets more control of the franchise, and then they put out part 2 of the game, and then they change the characters because they don't want these more or less inspiring characters. So they kind of make it seem like Joel was too evil, and he has to die, and he deserves to die in a brutal way. And then they also change the girl, who's now a young adult, and she also succumbs to evil. She becomes evil. She's powerless to stop herself from becoming evil. And it's always in the second game this notion that it was all capitalism's fault. It was always the fault of the Republic, you know, the fault of people having families and owning things. If we just had communism, we would have been able to deal with the situation and make a better world, right? See, this is how, even when there's a franchise that's new and kind of inspiring, communists will get a hold of it and change it. Because that's like their magic. They're changing one thing, and this will enchant other people. Because they will dive into the second game, and they will come out of this game changed. Possibly. Potentially.
Well, this evil, just to mention, this is from one of the Babylonian tablet plates. The incantation goes like this: the evil spirit, the evil demon, the evil ghost, the evil devil, from the earth have come forth. From the underworld unto the land they have come forth. In heaven they are unknown. On earth they are not understood. They know not how to stand. They know not how to sit. No food they eat. No water they drink. I mean, it's very creepy if you think about it. You know,
Yeah.
he's saying basically they're not physically real. So you've got these reports about these aliens, the bodies that supposedly crashed, and of course they don't have a digestive system, right? They don't eat anything. They don't have sexual organs or whatever. I mean, you have different reports. So you wonder what is this? You know, it's amazing. You know, in Ireland, they find fairy shoes. 2.5-inch little shoes they'll find in some beaten track in the woods. And one guy took one of these to America to have it analyzed by scientists, and it was just it was inconceivable how finely threaded this thing was, made out of mouse skin. This particular one, and the really odd thing was the heel of this little mouse skin shoe for a 2 and 3/4 inch long foot was worn. The mouse skin was worn, like somebody had been walking in it. What is that? Um, Arthur Conan Doyle, the physician and writer who invented Sherlock
Sherlock
Holmes,
Holmes.
yes, very famously, he died on a fairy mound. He wrote a history of spiritism, what it is, the spiritualist movement. They came with the Fox sisters, table tapping and all that, things moving around the room. I think when the Royal Society sent somebody to investigate it, he came back and they said, "Oh yeah, what a joke that was." And the guy investigator came back and said, "No, it's real,"
Yeah.
and they were all shocked. Um, so the thing is that there is whatever this is, and we don't know what these things are. We don't understand it. It goes back though centuries and centuries, and evil is one of the primary components when you get because imagine if you read some of the works by well, Father Malachi Martin, but there's a famous exorcist couple in the United States that are not, I think they're the only ones that aren't ordained priests that are recognized by the Catholic Church as exorcists. It's a couple, and there's some books on them. And what's interesting is the way they relate this stuff is that these things are happening. People are afflicted, and it's like a kid brings a Ouija board home and is playing with it, and suddenly really bad things start happening in the house, life-threatening things, things that are very destructive of the property of the people, frightening things, and they end up having to call a priest. They end up having it being investigated. I mean, these cases, they're real. They exist, and they've been documented. Years ago, I had friends. This is in the 1980s, who had a beautiful apartment in Dana Point. They were three work colleagues. They kind of rented this place together, the Villa Orilla in Dana Point, and they were suddenly, cabinets were opening and shutting by themselves. Things were being thrown around rooms. Uh, one of the guys, he could only go to sleep with the TV on. He got so scared. Finally, they had this great lease, and they just gave it up and left. And they put money into that place, fixing it up. They just left. They left and moved to San Clemente. Um, and it's like, did that really happen? Well, they gave up money, you know. And
Hmm.
so I said to one of them, why don't you just call the Society for Psychical Research and tell them about this? No, we just want to get out of there. So I called the Society of Psychical Research and said, you want to come down and check this place out? And their answer to me, oh no, we're so busy with things, we don't have time for something mundane like that.
Hmm.
So they had some girl in I think it was Mission Viejo, who wherever she walked in the house, water sprang up out of the floor and it was wrecking the house, right? So I mean, you hear that sort of thing, that kind of phenomenon going on, but it is recorded, and if you really look into it, it's there if you want to find it. What is the cause of it? Again, you see this is disordered, isn't it? There's something disordered about rocks coming out of the sky and hitting your house and breaking your windows, or water coming out of the floorboards of your house, after your kid plays with a Ouija board. um, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, to most people. Most people will say, oh, you're crazy. Look at the documentation.
Yeah.
Look at the
I mean,
documentation.
there's some people on this earth who are reported to be the richest, right? You see those numbers tossed around in the media. Oh, this guy is worth 100 billion or 200 billion dollars and blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, of course, it's complex. They're part of a net, a system. They hold, or at least in their, in on paper, they hold stock, right? They don't have hundreds of billions lying around for them to do with as they please. But there's something I noticed. There's people that are reportedly super rich. We can gather from bits and pieces of information that they're into the occult or ancient ancient mystery cults, but they, for some reason, they limit themselves, or they're limited by others, powerful people. They're limited in the way they live and spend money. It's kind of legendary how some of these investor icons that they drive these boring average cars, and they have, like a nice house in an expensive neighborhood in this city, in that city, but kind of small. And they don't, some of them, they even don't buy expensive clothing. And it's always wondered why they limit themselves, or why they were being limited by other people, because there's some people that build the great palaces, and it's like there might be some kind of an occult hierarchy where people, if they're not part of a dynasty, if they have to be limited in some way, because they think that buildings are magic. It's like the specific buildings, especially European buildings, they have been made according to occult rules. The measurements, the math behind it, the magical math, and the symbols and colors, everything has to fulfill a certain purpose. It's like following a handbook. Like the whole building is a ritual and has to be correct, has to be absolutely precise. But only very few powerful people actually get that. And a lot of people that work for them, they're so limited. They're not allowed to. It's like they're not allowed certain things. Or somebody like Warren Buffett saying he's giving away his wealth to other people that he thinks are deserving or capable of getting it. Or somebody saying that they limit their own children. Their children, they don't get a lot of things, even though they on paper have tens of millions or tens of billions. So it seems like it's like very, very limited in what some people are allowed to have. And I think this is also there's also some occult rule set for that. And of course, if you're a dynasty and you give people too much too soon, maybe they don't function right in that hierarchy, in that system that has been built for thousands of years. You think that's kind of like it's not just a money limitation, that there's not enough money around to have people buy whatever they want. But there's also there's some people that are claimed to be so rich and powerful, but on a day-to-day basis, sure, they may have a private jet, but who likes flying? Nobody really likes flying. And they have a house here and a house there, but they sleep in these houses. They just sleep in there. Maybe party every once in a while. Not necessarily like Jeffrey Epstein, but it's like they're limited. They're severely restricted in the magic they're allowed to have.
You're restricted in, look, I'm one person. Let's say I'm a rich person and I own 5 houses. I can only sleep in one at a time.
Yeah.
I can't, if I have a car, I can only drive one at a time. What is the point to owning all that stuff? But yeah, you got the question of people making deals with the devil to have whatever, that may be metaphorical in some cases, may be literal in some cases. I think that when people go against the truth, they're making a deal with the devil. When they lie, when they know what the truth is, or they ought to know what the truth is. This is an argument I have with Jimmy from Brooklyn. Jimmy thinks that everybody's innocent. I'm willing to give certain people the benefit of the doubt, but I've seen enough to know that most of it isn't innocent. You have a duty to know certain things as a human being, as a member of a republic, as the truth is your responsibility. That is something put on you by God, right? We're living within God's system. The truth of that system is the truth. I just shouldn't have used my hands.
It's just
The
a
truth of
close-up.
that system, yeah, the truth of that system is basically what guides us, what makes our life possible. Look, it's harmony. The world is created just so. You don't go stepping off a 3rd floor window thinking, oh, I'm just going to take a little jump here. It's a shortcut. You're going to hurt yourself. Everything's made in a certain way, and we have to live a certain way. That's why there's rules. They're like safety rails on a stairs. So you just don't go straight down and break your neck. But people that, oh no, we don't want rules. We're going to rebel against this. And scofflaw and breaking the rules and taking drugs and committing crimes and lying, but it starts with in yourself, lying to yourself. That's where a lot of this stuff starts.
I mean,
It's like, yeah.
Didn't Tucker Carlson recently, or fairly recently, didn't he say or claim he had some sort of a demonic experience? And I hear that more and more. It's like when sort of internet celebrities, when they
Wait a minute. He had a demonic experience, or he is a demonic experience. What did he say?
well, he said something along the lines of he's had a demonic encounter, and that sort of makes him special or gave him greater sense of whatever, and he's even more Christian than ever before because he encountered a demon, he says. But it's like this, I hear the same stuff more and more from these internet celebrities who want to be special so bad and so hard, and they're not special. It's like Alex Jones has talked about this. He's talked about how he Alex Jones has talked about his playing with the demons when he was young, and then he went too far and blah 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 blah, and then
Alex Jones talked about playing with demons.
Yeah, I mean he's
Really?
he admitted this. Well, I think this is when journalists started digging into his past. This was, I think, during the Obama era when his audience grew.
He's
and
involved in devil worship, Alex Jones, huh?
Well, I mean, there was this.
And he shouts against the pedophiles and the devil worshippers.
There was this time when he expanded his audience during the Obama era, and journalists started digging into his background. There was John Ronson, right? I mean, he.
Oh yeah, John Ronson. I read the book Adventures with Extremists.
Yeah, and he's. I think you can see him in one of Jones's documentaries, maybe the Bohemian Grove documentary. I think maybe you see Ronson in a bit, and they talked. I think he was a guest on the Jones show a few times, but eventually. Ronson grew disenchanted with Jones, and he dug into Jones's past, and he had this audio presentation. It's like 30 to 60 minutes long or something. I listened to it a long time ago, a couple of years ago, and so he talked to all these people that knew Jones back then in high school, and there was some pretty disturbing recollections. I mean. First of all, the origin story is not true. He wasn't. There's no evidence, real hard evidence that Jones, as a kid, as a teenager, was exposing police corruption in his hometown, in his school, and he was. He tells these stories. He was dating girls, and their fathers were Satanists, and so that's where he learned how this all worked, and how evil the world was, and then he turned into this proto-hero. Publicly in school at a school event, exposing the corrupt police structures and drug dealing and blah blah blah, and that's when things got so dangerous for Jones that he had to leave town with his family. So that origin story, apparently, there's no real evidence for it. He just got into fights, random fights, all the time, and he told the story about the football team attacking him for whatever reason. I don't know what he did for people to attack him. So people talked to Ronson saying Jones used to have these fights all the time. Alex Jones used to have these fights all the time. And one of the guys that he supposedly jumped, like surprise attacked, which is not a brave thing to do. One of these guys had some sort of lasting brain damage from that. And then that victim's buddies or family members, they then jumped Alex Jones and rammed his head into the concrete or something. And that was not even the last of it. So there was the story of, or multiple accounts of Jones acting very bizarrely, kind of like almost in a demonic way, having fun with it and just like a bit terrorizing other people, scaring other people in the school. trying to fashion himself as an evil entity. And so this is kind of like what journalists had dug up. And I think during the Obama era, when people were digging into Jones's background, that's when he started to tell a little bit of these old stories. Of course, in a twisted sense, making himself out to be the hero, somebody who dabbled in the dark, who went too far in the other way, but then returned and became a good guy, a hero chosen by God to liberate us from evil. But he had to admit certain bits. Also, the things with his supposed hundreds of girlfriends and how many of those got pregnant and what happened afterwards. I mean, he started to admit a little bit of the stuff. I think in advance, if some damaging story comes out, he could preempt the story and say, I already talked about this. This is not a revelation. I already admitted some stuff. But now I'm reborn as, I was later reborn as a Christian. Now I'm saving the world.
When he started out back in the 90s, if you looked at his early stuff, he presented himself as kind of a Christian fundamentalist originally.
Yeah. I mean, that's always been
He
like
seemed
his.
a lot more holier than now back then than he does
And it
now.
helped him. It helped him a great deal because people saw his popularity rising, and they thought, well, he's a family man. He was known as a family man. No scandals, just married for years and years, one kid after the other. He even said that multiple times on the show. Hey, if somebody tries to find dirt on me, they're not going to find anything. I'm so boring, for anybody who's digging into my past. But then he changed kind of the story and said, I kind of was evil and kind of demonic, but I totally changed afterwards. And it's like there's so many people who are popular and they tell these stories, and more and more people on the internet say, oh, I witnessed Satanists, or I was at parties and I was exposed to demonic events. And it's hard to tell if who's completely lying, who's completely making things up, or maybe somebody
Who's
got
been in the
something.
Hotel California and who hasn't, huh?
Yeah, and maybe somebody slipped something in their drink, and they thought they saw something.
Or
Of
they
course
did.
it's the influencer game. It's like the music industry. When the music industry became a big thing, influential thing, there were these parties, there were systems established. They would find these younger, talented people who couldn't make it on their own because they were only good looking, had a good voice, but couldn't write a hit song, or they were lacking in some other way, or they had no money to promote their own stuff, and there was no internet. So this is when people got invited to the parties, getting to play with the dark side, and then they get the choice. You want to join the dark side, you want to be successful, you want to make millions and be the man. You gotta basically sign a contract in your blood and play and be the forever in the devil's. The devil has you, and you can never really leave. You can sort of retire, but you can never really go back from that. And so some people made that choice, and they became famous musicians. And Jones talked about the parties. He talked about Jones multiple occasions talked about these high-level parties, and he was invited, and they wanted him to join their side, and there were these 5-star escort women at these parties, but he always claimed he said no. He always claimed he went to the parties, but he refused the offer, right?
And then he goes on Joe Rogan and they drink hard liquor and they smoke pot.
If
For
that's if
several
that's the
hours
if
of
that's
Joe
the if
Rogan.
that's the end of
I
it,
watched
because
it.
we know that
Yeah.
they're I mean, Rogan loves psychedelics. He loves that whole 1960s
Oh
crazy
yeah, they
music
might have
scene
done something
with
later
the
afterwards. Yeah.
with the LSD and DMT, and then at some point Jones started talking about drugs like DMT and the visions he has before he goes to sleep, and he makes him so special and all that. Who knows what kind of stuff they're doing in their private time? What?
Hey, Alex Jones, do you hear the voices too?
Yeah, I think he hears a lot of voices at this point. I think everybody's ever worked for him or and left or got fired, or people that were married to him. I don't remember anybody saying anything good about him. Um,
And Tucker Carlson maybe has heard the voices because he's talking about having had a experience. Yeah, the thing is that when you deal with this, look, it's very serious to have an obligation to tell the truth. You have a big microphone, you're talking to millions of people. This is huge. Your influence on people, what you can do for good or evil, I mean, that's a huge responsibility. You better take that serious. You better not lie to people. You better not support a totalitarian regime that's murdering people and try to make it look good. You better
Yeah,
not.
and it's also,
But
I
he
mean,
has.
it's like the music industry, right? There's famous, super famous, or been super famous musicians that couldn't write a hit song, but they made this deal. They went to the parties, and then the network got them the producers, and they wrote the hit songs, and they created this image, and they had the distribution and the advertisement. Made them a star, but it was always clear that these artists couldn't make it on their own. And I think that Alex Jones couldn't have made it on his own, and Tucker Carlson couldn't have made it on his own, becoming such a widely known figure, because they seem so generic. They make these wild claims, and everybody can lie about these claims. Everybody can say on the internet, "Oh, I had this demonic thing, and I went to these parties, and I was these Satanists tried to get me, and I refused, and I saw demonic things." I mean, everybody can lie about this and make themselves seem more special than they really are, but they're so generic in what they say. I mean, if they talk about Russia and Ukraine, it's so generic. It's just copy and paste, or traditional conspiracy mythology. I mean, it's so generic and so cheap. Everybody can just copy this stuff and just play the hero, really. It's like, what
Yeah.
makes these people special?
Well, yeah, that's a culture thing. Look, you had, back. I remember, I was interested. I read the Life and Letters of Thomas Babington Macaulay, a work about a great literary figure of the 19th century, one of the great users of the English language. And Thomas Macaulay, early on in the night, he was born, I think, in 1800 or 1801. And early on in his career, you'd go to these dinner parties and you'd have these magnificent discussions about theology and history and philosophy, and people were serious and their learning was serious. And then as you went on, the fashionable people, it was all about what you were wearing, the latest entertainment, fashion, style, entertainment, and that substance started to go away and it wasn't popular anymore. So that if you were a substantial person, you were not really liked at these parties because you were considered to be a bore, and people didn't want to keep up the conversation because you'd have to read, you'd have to be thinking, and so this was, I almost saw it in my mind reading about this, the slow movement of the fashionable circles of society, and this is in Victorian England, um, moving in a direction that where we are today, step by step, slowly, progressively. Um, and of course, so that we've got these fashionable people on the right. I mean, Alex Jones needing to present himself as a sort of fundamentalist Christian from Texas, 30 years ago, now openly, going on Joe Rogan, drinking hard liquor and smoking pot and talking, using bad language and talking about some very strange things. Um, and this guy has millions of followers,
Yeah, they talked about
online.
it. They talked on. I mean, when he was on Rogan, the first time or second time, Jones wanted to appear like he has super special access to information, like the most secret stuff, and he has the best
He
contacts and
claims to
everything.
be a prophet, that he calls everything in advance, which
Yeah,
I challenge.
and so Jones made a claim along the lines of, my super duper contacts told me that there's these secret facilities of the U.S. government, super secret facilities, and they bring in specific people, and these people would then take crazy amounts of DMT or LSD or something, and then in this extreme state, these people would then be in contact with the interdimensional aliens. They would be like in almost like a cosmic conference room, finally being able to make contact and exchange ideas or demands, or making deals with them, or taking inspiration for them, or taking orders from them. And so he tried to make it out like this, like he knew this and it was a big deal. But Rogan wouldn't have it. Rogan was trying to Rogan was trying to knock him down. Really, he was dismissing it and saying, "Well, everybody who's done these drugs had these so-called contact experiences. You know, as if you're high enough, you will,
Contact with what?
yeah, you will see these beings, these strange entities, like you're in a crazy dream. You see these entities, and you feel like you're interacting with them, like they're taking control of your mind, or you're hooked into their mind." And Joe Rogan would just dismiss it as being special and say, well, everybody has these contact experiences, so why is your story special? Do you have any solid proof? And of course, Jones didn't have any solid proof. But maybe he made it up. Maybe somebody's feeding that to him. Maybe there's some weird people in the military or some other influential people like General Flynn or whoever. Maybe they're feeding that to him. Maybe they're saying that to him. Like, yeah, we are in contact with the beings, and we're so superior. Just follow what we tell you to do, and we can protect you from your scandals and whatnot. But you have to work for us or with us because we know best, because we got it from the aliens, the interdimensionals. And people listen to the Jones Show. I mean, you want to listen to a guy
Yeah.
who admittedly has brain damage from his old days and who's done who knows what kind of substances for how long, and who thinks he's working with people who work with interdimensional aliens. Where do you
Yeah. Well,
draw
see,
the line?
this is the thing, and then you've got David Icke. So what do you do? You've got this whole menagerie, and it's becoming mainstreamed. If you have Secretary of State Marco Rubio alluding to it in a documentary, and you're saying we need disclosure and we need it now.
Mm-hmm.
What is that going to entail? What are they talking about? What are they really going to disclose? So far, they've told us everything, bodies, craft, reverse engineering. Okay, where is the free energy? Where are the actual biologics? They'll come around, but in the meantime, everybody's so lapping this up that everybody's buying into it and ready to listen to the Joneses and the David Ikes and so on. And so where does that leave them? What is the belief system they're left with? What is the frame of reference?
Yeah,
Oh, you're
it's
a
a
slave
meta
race.
religion, right? It's like
Yeah,
a
you're a
meta
slave
super
race. Yeah,
religion, because they can
it's
always
not the.
like
Yeah,
Erich von Däniken, Zechariah Sitchin, they all created sort of this interwoven thing of,
yeah.
well, none of the traditional religions are wrong per se. They say, or because there were so many religions, they were all kind of all these people in ancient times. They were all in contact with the aliens, and so
Yeah, ancient
nobody
alien
is.
theorists.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
nobody who has any sort of previous regular religion, nobody is quite wrong, but they're not fully right either. But now we tell you what's fully correct, and this is how we can weave all these religions together, basically. But usually, when Zechariah Sitchin was talking about these entities, or Erich von Däniken was talking about these entities, they ultimately make it more complicated again. It's not like, okay, now it's simple. We just, there's this super entity, and we just follow orders, and we don't have to think anymore. But they make it more complicated. Now they have this whole set of characters, cosmic characters, and it's almost like these ancient gods that have over boiling emotions, and they're plotting against each other, and they're jealous of each other, and they're like they have vanity and different personalities, and they have different plots and
well,
counterplots, and
I find Lou Elizondo's claim that there were two vehicles at Roswell very suggestive of him saying that, basically one of them shot the other one down, maybe, right? That these aliens are, and with the ancient alien theorists, by the way, I wanted to say about Zechariah Sitchin that the idea that he translates Babylonian cuneiform, that his translations, that he's actually translating anything is garbage. And there's a young man who's debunking Sitchin's work. He's gotten into this. He's worked with a lot of the people who do translate those ancient Sumerian tablets. The Sage of Time is one of his books. His name is Matthew LaCroix. and the secrets of the past, the nature of reality, and the ancient gods. He's so far. I'm reading this book. He seems to be a Gnostic of a different sort, but at least he's honest. And he's saying, look, I work with these people with the Babylonic cuneiforms. You can go look at the text that Sitchin claims he's translating to claim these ancient Anunnaki gods of the ancient Sumerians are astronauts, from another world, and showing that it's not. It is not so. This is the same magic about the evil spirits that the Assyrians and the Babylonians, the descendants of the Akkadians, were talking about. It's supernatural. It's not extraterrestrial. But yet, and Zachariah Sitchin, he was born in what was Soviet Azerbaijan. It was, I think maybe became Soviet the year he was born. So he ends up in Israel, then ends up in the United States. Where does this stuff come from? Why is he purporting this ancient alien theory? I don't know. Von Daniken is what is he, Swiss? He's Swiss-German, right?
Something like that, yeah.
What in the German world do they say about Von Daniken's background? What is this guy's background? Does he have contacts with the Eastern Bloc?
Well, he's always been a controversial figure, and he's enjoyed his success. I mean, somebody made the success happen, because I don't know who helped him with that, because he was so generic. There was nothing special about him.
So millions and millions of books.
Yeah,
and it's
it's just like
kind of
total fame, no substance. And when let's assume for a moment, in the coming years, or maybe 10, 20 years down the line, let's assume powerful governments, Western, Eastern, whatever, when they come out and say, or if they come out and say, okay, the alien thing is real, the multidimensional thing is real, is it going to be scarcity for the population? Is it going to be just another set of problems and deprivation? Because this would be kind of the normal thing that I would expect. They come up with a story. Yeah, there's the good aliens and there's the bad aliens, and there's some sort of, like in a horror movie, like in a fictional occultist horror movie story, there's a set of rules to get what we want, and we have to do all these kind of things as a collective society, and only if we get it right, then we get what we want. But we can't. We must not get it wrong.
A leg of a toad and a left finger of a dead witch.
Yeah. And so we have to go through this phase of deprivation and scarcity, and we have to do all these things and endure like we've always done as regular human beings, and it's gonna be the same old. And because of this convoluted story of, okay, these are the good aliens, these are the bad ones, and we need to do these things. It's complicated again, right? It's not simple. It's not the wonderland that we've been promised, but it's like this cosmic, galactic,
Zeta Ridiculans,
horror movie story, like a horror movie story where you have to have a rule set of how to defeat the bad guy, and it's going to be a close call.
Bullet kills the werewolf, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be a close call, and maybe not everybody is going to make it, and maybe there's most of us are going to disappear. Because that's just what this cosmic rule book is, and we can't change that.
Sounds like communism.
Yeah. Because ultimately, like the Russians nowadays, I mean the Dugin types and the Russian controlled conspiracy buffs, they always talk about depopulation, right? The Georgia Guidestones and killing almost everybody except 500 million or whatever, and talk about eugenics a lot. Whereas Russia claims to be pro-life, and Alex Jones has said this again. They love having families over there and children, even though nobody wants to have children anymore in Russia. But it's like this thing about they cry and whine about depopulation and eugenics. But what is the end game of communism? Do they really want 8 billion, 9 billion, 10 billion people on manage them? Because why would you need them? I mean, if you have control, if you win, why would you need all these people? You have to manage them. You don't have to create all that, produce all that grain anymore, or laundry machines or television screens to keep these communist serfs happy, or and surveil them and have all this infrastructure to deal with rebellions. Why bother? Why not have, when you have control, when you achieve the sense of control, why not just reduce all these people? Why not get rid of
If
most
you're
of them?
able to travel between planets, you should have robots to do all your work for you,
Right.
right?
Right. Who
What
needs
is this?
people then?
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Why
No,
why would
I
a
mean, look, it's all bad science fiction. When you cut through the problem with the documentary, and 34 government officials. Look, I don't understand it. 34 government officials going on the record. Some of them whistleblowers, many of them with positions at the Pentagon. A couple of physicists like Hal Puthoff being on there. I mean, respectable people. They believe this. They claim they've seen. One scientist says, "I've seen the bodies. I've seen the craft," and so and what is absolutely certain is that these Commander Fravor and the other pilots of the squadron on the USS Nimitz and a couple other aircraft carriers in the Atlantic that saw these Tic Tac UFOs, that took gun camera footage of them, that tracked them on the radar. Okay, this looks like a real thing, right? It looks, I'm not going to say, who knows what this is, but the thing is disclosure. If there is something and we have it, you don't want to disclose this because it's first of all, we are really, if this is extraterrestrials, we're really in trouble because that means the dark force hypothesis is true. And that's as bad as demons. And if this is interdimensionals, which is what Anna Paulina Luna, the congresswoman in charge of that oversight committee in the House that's looking into the UFOs, because it's about misappropriation of money, right, for a secret program, the legacy program. Uh, if she's told they're interdimensionals, then grab your cross and and be ready for the Exorcist, because that is what Johnny Akil warned about years ago. Carla Turner, look, Carla Turner, her family was abducted. She was a history professor at was at Texas University. She was from Texas. She went and investigated. She worked with these abductees. I got to tell you, she wrote the most terrifying book of an abductee experience that I've ever read in my life. One of the most terrifying books I've ever read. It's called Masquerade of Angels, if you kind of get the title of that book. And it's about a guy who is plagued with UFO abduction, can't remember what happens, has an abduction when he's a kid, and his grandmother dies right after it. And when they finally access the memories, it's rape. It's about the most horrific rape of a boy that you could possibly, and it's demonic creatures raping him, right? Just to cut to the chase. And this is the UFO phenomenon. What, an alien wouldn't come all that way
Hmm.
to rape
Hmm.
a boy, right? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That
None
is
whatsoever.
the, what makes more sense is what the ancient Assyrians were saying. These things are out there hunting people. We got to protect ourselves from these things, right? You got the tablet of the seven wicked spirits, which was also found in Ashurbanipal's library, which is how you summon them. You mentioned that Pazuzu was, the wind. It's about these seven wicked spirits are about wind, storms, hurricanes, floods. It's about wiping things out with this kind of force. And and of course, believing that this kind of powerful force, of course, coming from the sky, right? Because that's where rain and flood and wind come from, is a power that these creatures, these entities, these demons, goblins, as they say in their text, the evil devil, the evil spirit, the evil demon, etc. This is what they're talking about. And the question, when you go to somebody like Jack Parsons in the desert in New Mexico with L. Ron Hubbard being
Hmm.
followers, in 1945, being followers of Aleister Crowley, having a summoning of a little man, a homunculus, right? Right when all this stuff is taking off, right when they're exploding the atomic bomb out there, and then you have little homunculus-like creatures crashing out there in the New Mexico desert? Did they summon these things? And later, according to Nick Redfern, the Collins elite, that people he interviewed, if they're real or not, people have argued that maybe he was spoofed or he made it up. But if you read that book he wrote on the Collins elite, these guys, there's CIA, I mean, it was the FBI interrogated Parsons, and they wanted to know, is this UFO stuff? Is this because of your summoning of this entity? And Parsons, the quote from Parsons from the documents, I think he presents the actual declassified documents in the book. The quote from Parsons is, yeah, it could be that we did that. Right?
We messed
and
up.
there's a letter from Aleister Crowley saying,
yeah, and that's kind of the thing. That's kind of the thing about. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing about it's attribution. I mean, you see studies from U.S. government institutions like cybersecurity and that sort of thing, where they say we have a problem with attribution. If systems get attacked and we have massive damage, how can we conclusively know who attacked us, or how can we prove really who attacked us? Because how do we retaliate? What do we do? And same with all these exercises about a potential smallpox attack. This is being trained on a regular basis. If smallpox happens in different places at the same time, it becomes a wider problem. You assume it's an attack, but who did it? Because everybody has access to smallpox, and it can be deployed so silently. How do you attribute who attacked you? How do you know that? And so it becomes a legal issue. How do you declare war on somebody if you don't have conclusive proof? I mean, this is like when 9/11 happened, and then there was an attack on Iraq, and this whole debate on was Iraq connected to 9/11 or other plots or whatever. And so when we talk about entities, what do you do about attribution? Do you know was this somebody's sophisticated weather weapon, or was this the bad aliens, the bad entities? Was this a genuine plague, or was this sent by the demons, or all kinds of things? How do you attribute anything when when we have this official narrative maybe at some point in the future of it's interdimensional beings, and there's good ones and bad ones, and we get attacked and blah 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 blah. How do you do that? And especially if people are asked to perform rituals, sending energy, and we saw that so much from communist infiltrated esoteric circles. They always were told. I mean, the followers of these esoteric groups, the followers were always told, especially during the Cold War, do not fight back against something physically. You have to have a love ritual, and this is the same thing you can find in the books of David Icke. The conspiracy guy David Icke. He I pulled the quotes from. I have several of his books, and I went through them, and he had that whole section in one of his books where he said that that's a false concept of fighting evil directly with weapons and physical force. That's the wrong way, because this is how you feed the evil. This is how you feed these interdimensional reptile creatures that he talks about. I mean, he looks kind of like a reptile, just so we get that out. But but he says that he says something like these demons come from, or reptiloids, whatever. They come from the lower fourth dimension or whatever, and this, because of frequencies and blah blah blah, they can cause this evil. But if we physically fight terrorists or a bad country or whatever, if we fight against an army, by using that force and that violence, we feed the demons, we feed their energy.
So we're not allowed to resist.
We repeat the cycle. We make everything worse. And so instead, we must perform this we must instead, he said, perform these magic love rituals. We're sending our love energy magically, shooting our love energy at the evil, at these evil creatures, and this is how we win. And he's completely paradoxical in what he says in that book, because he claims that traditional religion was bad because they made people, traditional religion made people feel guilty, and traditional religion tried to control people through fear. And he says that this is totally terrible and it's horrible that they did that, but then he does the same thing. He says people have to feel guilty because we are collectively guilty of prolonging the cycle of evil because we don't do his kind of magic. So we're guilty of everything. All the bad stuff that happened, we give energy to the reptilioid demons. So we're responsible. It's the original sin that we committed and keep committing. So we're responsible, we're guilty. And he also tries to control the reader or his audience through fear by saying, well, if you don't do my magic, then this bad stuff keeps happening and to you and your family members, and it's all going to go badly, right? So this is kind of like the game that David Icke had been playing, and I'm still questioning why he got so famous, right? I mean, who helped his road to fame and being notorious?
Soccer player, yeah, and of course these people turn out to be all pro-Russia, anti-Ukraine.
Yes.
Which I just have to point that out, that, look, the communist bloc exists, and when people come out on that side, it doesn't matter how crazy what they say is. Once you see this, you're going, well, what the heck is this? This is an agent of Russia? Why is he on? Oh, no, well, of course, you'd say it has nothing to do with that. Is that really possible? Or is he in connection with the Pazuzu, like maybe Putin's got Pazuzu in him, and so is David Icke? I mean, I don't know.
Is he thinking Putin is sending love energy? I mean, is David Icke and his son and his colleagues, are these characters like David Icke, are they really believing the Russian regime is performing love magic and they're sending their love to the world? No, they're just hurting people, and they enjoy it, and they think it's their right to do so.
It's the thing about being dishonest and being a scammer, and they make a ton of money. Look, maybe there's a sign that if you're making a lot of money doing what you're doing, you look at Tucker Carlson. What is wrong with this picture? I used to think Tucker Carlson was sincere. I realize now that he doesn't have a sincere bone in his body. There's something terribly wrong
it's like
there.
There's this technique that's called blaming the victim, right? Your life wasn't pleasant, or there's major trauma,
Very
or
evil, blaming the victim.
something bad happened to you or your child or your wife or whatever. Actually, if you read David Icke and books like his material, you are getting told that it's your fault because you didn't do the magic, because you focused on the bad stuff, right? I mean, obviously you would focus on bad stuff that's happening, right? I mean, to you personally or collectively or to Ukraine, but they keep telling people that you shouldn't confront that evil. I mean, let alone fight it for real. No, you shouldn't even think about it, really. Because if you think about all the bad stuff will manifest. You make it happen. You make it become a reality. So if you just blank it out, if you just not think about it, you just keep you're concerned with you, yourself, and your happiness and all the money you want to get. If you do that magic, then the good stuff in your life is going to appear. It's going to be manifested. And so you're just blaming the victim. So we think that some poor person dirt poor person in Africa, or some starving person in North Korea, well, they brought it onto themselves because they focus on the bad stuff. I mean, they should just read David Icke books and focus on, how rich they want to be. It's this craziness, and I'm just very much concerned about this, powerful government people talking about entities and demons and aliens and interdimensional beings. What is the final narrative going to be? That if there's deprivation, if there's scarcity, if there's misery on the planet, still after these revelations, Will they say something like David Icke along the same lines and say, well, we're guilty collectively because we didn't do enough love magic, love rituals, and we need to police ourselves, our own thoughts, and we need to police each other. If you catch something, and this is also in one of David Icke's books, and this is also copied by many other people. If you encounter a person who might be your brother, might be your child, might be parent, anything. If you encounter a person who is focused on problems and trying to solve problems and be concerned about problems, you should stay away from that person. If that person is not willing to do the love magic and do the self-brainwashing and brainwash others, if that person does not want to join the cult, cut them off. Just ghost them. Don't be associated with them, because if you do, then something bad will happen to you, because that's how the cosmic rulebook is played. So I think there's a significant danger of mass manipulation, a mass cult movement, and there's competing factions who want to run this cult movement, and if this is tied to interdimensional entities, how do we know that we're being told the truth about the contact? I mean, if somebody has contact with entities, would this person automatically be honest about it? Or would he try to get something out of that contact for himself and his buddies and his regime?
And what kind of social engineering is being done on us through this topic?
It's not either one or the other. It's not either, okay, it's all going to be completely fake or it's going to be completely real. There could be contact with entities. But, why would we get the truth about it? Why would we get the benefits of it? Why would we expect to get the truth about what somebody had found out?
The thing is at one point, was it Michael Shermer of the Skeptic?
That guy.
He goes to extremes sometimes in his skepticism, but he made a good comment in that, look, all this stuff in this age of disclosure, if you go back to the 1970s, these same allegations were made. Back in the 1960s, you read Donald Kehoe or Frank Edwards' books, flying saucers are here, flying saucers on the attack, whatever. They were saying the same things this documentary is saying, and that we need disclosure, and disclosure is coming. Look, people believed in the 1970s disclosure was imminent. It's not. The only difference now, and it's a slight one, is that people are now claiming, well, we're inside the government, we know it's true. Well, you're part of ATIP, you're investigating. You aren't from the legacy program. Show me someone actually say, I'm from the legacy program, I know it's real, we're doing this. Well, supposedly, I don't know, maybe there are such people and I missed them, but it just, I don't know. I want to see the proof, of that other stuff, because there's too much of this occult thing connected to this for me not to be suspicious. And but I think we've done almost 3 hours here. I think, Alex, did you have anything last comment you wanted to make?
Well, it's kind of I think the final suggestion, which I've made before, people desperately need to read. People need to be very careful with the internet and this sort of magical feeling of I can access everything all the time, and it feels so great. It makes me feel all powerful. And there's studies about the effect it has on children if you can move through spheres regardless of time and space, digitally and that sort of thing. Be careful about that stuff. I mean, 99%, almost all of the stuff on the internet it doesn't help you. It's not making things better for you. Most content is garbage. It's a waste of time. Even pop culture, almost all of it is not even good. If you stay away from that stuff, not completely, not become like a cult member in a cave, but if you've seen the really good stuff, okay, fine, move on. Pick a few really good things, enjoy them, and move on. And because if you're if you read a real book, you can get a different sense of time. It's almost like time is slowing down for you, right? It's not really slowing down, but your sense of time changes, and you change by reading a book, and you can just disregard most of the stuff that's really out there. You be very selective, and the better you get, and you have to be careful about what to follow. But the more you read, the stronger you get, the more you can get into the more wild stuff, the more out there stuff. Because I don't have much respect for people who haven't really mastered anything, who haven't really made a real effort with these scientific topics. But they say they are so far above that, right? They want to start with the out there stuff. They want to start with the crazy stuff. They want to just do the out there stuff, but they have never really mastered anything. I don't have much respect for these people. But if you yourself or somebody else, if they have mastered different things and they're really careful and they move step by step, and they're always looking at it from different angles and process different scenarios, that's somebody you can listen to. That's something you could be like. Don't start with the crazy stuff at first. I was very careful about that for the longest time. People have followed my material for decades now. Really, really careful. I took my time with that, and I'm still really, really careful with the out there stuff.
Yeah, it's very difficult to know who you're reading and whether they falsified or skipped over. This is the problem. You're going to take somebody else's word for it. A lot of times you have to do your own checking. You have to figure it out for yourself, and it's going to take time. And we all get things wrong. We all jump to conclusions. We make mistakes. So that's why it's always good to be a little humble and say, I don't know. The magic words, I don't really know. But maybe we can find out, or maybe we'll be clearer about it at some time in the future if we keep asking questions. So um, I'm Jeff Nyquist. This has been another edition of Friends and Enemies, and my co-host has been Alex Benesch. I'm in the U.S. Alex is in Germany. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you'll join us next week for another edition of Friends and Enemies.